All right, so now that we have tackled the extremities with the hands and the head, we're ready to work our way into the limbs. And we're going to go ahead and start with the legs. Now, by starting with the legs, the area I tend to actually start with is the pelvis. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of resolve the legs into the pelvis. One of the approaches I like to take is sort of what I like to call the underwear approach or the subligar approach, which is kind of creating a pair of underwear that the legs are going to plug into. For the crotch area here, usually what we can do is create a topology setup here where we have two quads next to each other that form this upward facing angle, like so. And essentially cup the genital area, like so. And the cool thing about this is we can send lines up this way, and we can have two lines down this way to kind of fill this in and just give this some more directionality to head up into the body. The other area I like to solve for is the butt area. The butt is very large on this character. And generally what we want to do is get some indication of the cheek here coming to the sides. And there's different ways you can resolve this. You could turn it up here and kind of head into the back with these if you want. This can be okay. So to give you an example of what I mean, not resolving it like that, but resolving it like this, where we create a face similar to what we did with the groin area. Bring out a bottom area that connects there, and then dividing this. So basically giving it its own edge loop here that traces around it and can be redirected, if that makes sense. So that is a method. You could also just go straight across. It kind of really doesn't matter at the end of the day. The one downside here is you do end up with this pole here that's going to go down into this area, which can sometimes cause issues. It really just depends on what you're going to go for. It also depends on if you're going to have your character clothed or not, if they're going to have a cloth simulation, if you're going to have cheek jiggle going down here. There's all sorts of stuff to kind of take into consideration when tackling the gluteus area here. And usually it's not so prominent on characters. I mean, I guess there is an exception. Female characters tend to have a very prominent gluteus area in this day and age in character design. So it varies by character. But ours is pretty muscular, pretty well defined, so we're going to give it that setup. Now, the next thing I like to do is on the outside here is direct this upward. So what you're essentially getting is sort of a cheek setup, if that makes sense. We can add another edge loop here and just kind of smooth this out to make these a little bit even, but that's going to be the setup we're going to have there for the gluteus. And this little curve here is going to help hold the form of the gluteus region in place. And if we need to, we can add an edge loop here. We don't really need to. Sometimes it can be nice to add this to have a little bit more volume going up into the body if you do need it. I don't know if we do. And I just want to be careful here that these don't get too close together. We did give this quite a cavernous setup, I guess you could say. So I'll approach that with caution. But that's something we can do in the gluteus area there to kind of get that set up if we want. Now, I don't think we need that extra edge there on ours, so I am going to drop it. I just wanted to show you can have it, and I'm just going to bring this down here and just keep this light as we need. But the nice thing is having that edge there, we know we can later on add that if we need to. Now from here, this is essentially going to come forward across here. So nothing super fancy. You just think of this like you would underwear, right? On a male, it's going to kind of come across and plug into here. And I find this works a little bit better than tracing up the pelvis area. There are some people who like to trace up the pelvis. Really just depends. I find something like this tends to be a little bit cleaner. We can still continue up the pelvis this way to resolve this if we want. So we can still kind of follow this pelvic area down into the backside and kind of across here, I would say would be a good idea. That way we can get an edge loop going up there if we want, and you can actually continue this down and around here as well, which is actually an okay idea. We can come into here and bring this between here. And I don't think we need that many edge loops down there, but you can see how that will come across, and then we can kind of just continue resolving this in this area once we have these large forms in place and we know what we want to do. So here's an example on the gluteus area. This is going to be an area where it turns forward like that, and then just kind of continues like normal here into the front side. And then that's going to start the round that the leg's going to plug into. I want to add an edge loop there. And yeah, now we're already to sort of the normal structure here that we're going to have going around this. So this area here, we need one extra 4 to make it go straight. But we basically want the legs to be as straight down here as possible. However, I am running into an issue here where this is kind of wrapping around. And I actually don't want that to wrap down and around. That should be connecting. All right. We're going to revisit that once we pull the leg up. But that should be sort of the base idea there. I think what I'm missing here is if we're going to do the groin area here, we have to do the groin correctly. So let's go ahead and take a step back here and connect this groin underneath. I think that is the part that I missed there. I jumped the gun a little bit too much on getting to the round area. Yeah, so we want the groin area to kind of connect back here for the lateral movement of the leg outward. Like so. So that should come down, and then we can continue this down and around. So you'll see this is the area that's connecting into. We can continue this connection up into there. So that's where we want to look for sort of that functionality where possible. Now, if I add an edge loop into here, it goes up and around into this area correctly. And I can essentially adjust this as I see fit. I am debating, though, if I want to change that setup a little bit here, because what might make more sense, rather than connecting it up and around like I did there, is to tie these in together into the gluteus area here better. Let me debate if that's what I want to do real quick. So I know I need this to connect to the center. So this has to go into the center no matter what. And then as far as these go, these can connect up into that roundabout area. So let's get that set. Just pull these back and get this core edge loop here to go up and around, and then that will connect into there. So that gives us a little bit of a gap there in the gluteus area that we're going to use for getting the sacrum resolved. But that will give this edge up and over here for this. And this is where I mentioned we may or may not want this. Really, that edge loop's not really doing anything for us at this point, so I might go ahead and get rid of that and just come in here and tidy that in and just move these over a bit here, because I think that will give us a better setup for the gluteus area. That's a little bit easier to manage. And if we need to, we can come in here and add an additional edge loop and just kind of extend these a bit more. Now, we also have to decide how far we might want to take those, how many of these groin ones we might want. General rules, you really only want about 2, like what we have there. So that should be fine for that area. And then, from here, we just bring this forward. And then into the groin area. So it's not always straightforward when you're building this out. That's why I like to build this first before we get into the leg area. But from here, you can start to kind of fill in some of these details. And you can see I'm just blocking these in with really large polygons, probably too large, because we will want some edge loops across here. But we can kind of factor those in here. So there's one. One more here. Make sure you're not putting it in the wrong spot. Resolve there. Resolve. So this is an area that's not quite resolving correctly. According to this, I need more edge loops. And yeah, I need more edge loops here as well. So those are all things I might want to play around with here. And this is pretty normal to have these kind of turn up here. We can reduce the number of these. We really don't need that many here. But this is pretty much correct, so I'm just going to go with it. But what you can do is you can add edge loops here that turn into that backside and redirect away from the leg. So you don't have so many going into the leg, and you can have more running across the back for more detail there. into that area. And we can kind of smooth to relax these. And you can see the structure kind of starting to take place there, going into the body and forming the gluteus region. Now, the sacrum, I do like to give a little bit more definition if we're going to have this sort of muscular setup. I like to do it similar to the groin, where I get it laid in here, and then on the sides, I give it these redirection edges, like so. And we can plug this into down here. We could go all the way down if we really want. I'm not 100% sure we do, but we could plug it into down there. I think I'm going to give the gluteus just one more edge before we get into the sacrum area here, like so. And then we can just kind of back off of here a little bit and just give these a little bit more even spacing into the sacrum area here. But this will go ahead and keep the sacrum's form. Do you really need it this way? Not really. It kind of has a nice interaction here, though, where it creates a key area of separation. So it can be nice. You could also just continue this straight up, but we'll add the sacrum anyway. And then same situation here, where we can kind of add edge loops as we need, kind of going up into the leg. So you can see here, that's going to go up and over and across the groin area there. And just like that, we're starting to get this area resolved a little bit better. And we can continue this up. So those are going to be the key areas to kind of focus in on, getting the groin area here, the genitals, and then the gluteus and the backside, and then trying to bring them all together. And that's the tricky part. I'm not going to lie, it is not the most straightforward process, and we still may need to make some adjustments. So just be aware that we're not quite 100% done with this area. We still have to resolve it down. Now, as far as resolving it down into the legs, I can start out by just creating a straight extrusion straight down here, and you're going to get a couple pulls, which is fine. Anytime you change directionality in terms of where your edge loops are going, you're going to get some pulls. That's pretty normal. But what we want to get on the leg is essentially just a cylindrical structure. Nothing super exciting here. Just a nice cylindrical form going underneath here that we can add an edge loop to. So when the leg bends, we can get some nice definition going forward. And the butt form there will hold because we have the supporting edges for it, and the groin area in the front will hold because we have the supporting edges for it. But we can add an edge loop there, and there we go. And that's going to start to give us the topology we need in this area for deformation purposes. I'm just smoothing along here to relax these a little bit better. And now we can move into the leg. Now for the leg, I like to kind of define it by 2 points, the lower leg and the upper leg. The upper leg is special because it has the knee. For the knee, I can just walk in a boxy structure here. I can pull down the vertices to the side and just get an upward sort of direction going for the knee here. And this is a nice little way to kind of get the knee in here without too much going on. I'm going to add an edge loop going across there. And then we're going to just bring this around the sides, keeping the base kind of towards the backside of the knee. And that's really all we need to do. We don't really need to do anything super special on the backside. All of these muscle details you're seeing, these are going to be captured in the normal map or displacement map or both from the texturing process. So a vast majority of the details that we've modeled in here, that's going to be texture information at the end of the day when it comes to higher end workflows. Now, there are some situations where each individual muscle does get modeled in the topology sometimes. For higher end video games like fighting games, sometimes that's the case. But generally, this is the approach that a lot take, is just kind of coming in here and getting a nice cylindrical form for deformation, letting textures do the work. So here I'm just tab and middle mouse dragging, and I'm just going to tweak the edges as we go here so that they're maintaining sort of an even spread as we go up. The key ones that I like to keep track of are sort of the middle of the foot and the backside of the foot, trying to keep those in the midline. It helps with UVs and weight painting if it's not twisting a whole lot. So those are two things I try and keep track of. That way you can just get nice clean cuts and things are kind of matching one-to-one, getting even volume on either side. You might want to hold down Shift as you go. When doing a model like this, I kind of try and match the silhouette as much as possible. That means not trying to match every point of density, but if there's a large change, making sure that that large change is captured in the form. So I'm going to give relatively even spacing to these as I go up. It's going to be something you're going to notice. And that's the reason I'm trying to capture that. Now, getting to the knee here, I'm just going to weld this up, but most importantly, I'm going to add any necessary edges to the knee that I need. There's a knee joke there with the word need that I'm totally missing and I'm bummed about, but I'm going to let it go. So let's go ahead and just keep wrapping this around here and giving the knee some extra support. And there we go. All right. So with these in here, once we have sort of this sock structure going, I'm going to hit this with a smooth just kind of across this whole area to relax these and get them to fall a little bit more evenly. It's okay that we don't have this bulk here. If we want to get it, I can add an edge loop and just kind of smooth, and that will adjust things accordingly. So there you go. But something like that's going to give us some nice leg topology there. And then we just repeat the process, but this time going up the leg past the knee. So we're going to get this up to the base here. Now I do have to be careful. You can see going over the quadricep, this is distorting quite a bit, and you want to be careful that these aren't accidentally welding into each other when you're using this technique of just kind of pulling these things up. All right, so let's go ahead and continue this up. And I'm going to get this close to the top, but I'm not going to connect it in. It's going to be a bit of back and forth. So just kind of keep nudging these to be evenly spaced, and that's going to be kind of your goal with this leg. And don't let the upstream edges influence you too much. We can add and remove those as needed. There's a couple key edge loops that we've added that we can't really do anything about, but we do want to get this form in here first. So from here, I'm just going to add edge loops to kind of make this a bit more even to capture the form better. Once again, if this was a game mesh, I'd probably be taking a different approach, but because we're kind of creating a general base mesh, I want to have these even spaces so that way I can turn this into whatever kind of mesh I need, and also potentially redo the sculpting process if needed with just kind of cleaner forms, cleaner topology. Okay, so that should get these ready to connect. Now, what I'm going to do is look at the groin first here, because I kind of have a lot going on, and decide what needs to go where and where I want to push these edge loops. So I kind of have a lot here. This is a permanent edge. You can see it terminates. This is a permanent edge. So both these have to be in here. So that means I have to figure out what's going on here. It would make sense to kind of put that there. Now this edge I can remove, so I will. I'll delete that off of the groin, and I'll just push this edge back more under the crotch to connect into here. And if I want to, I can lay down my first polygon now there. Now, the next important area is this area here, because I can't remove this. So these areas have to be in here. So I'm just going to make room for that and connect into here. And from this point, we don't need any of these underneath here 100%. We can delete them as needed. It looks like we have just enough to connect into here, though, which is great. So we can connect that, connect into here, and get that edge loop, and then we can just finish this going across. We may need to add some, hopefully don't need to remove any. I'll just add them as I go. And you might need to adjust them as I go. So for example, this one can definitely afford to be moved forward, just to give us a little bit more space. Move this one back. And then in here, we're gonna need to add in maybe several edge loops, and that should be fine. So we can add one in there, one in here, and then just resolve these by shift clicking and complete the legs. So at this stage, I'm going to smooth and just kind of get these nice and clean. If you've gotten this far and you're a little bit paranoid, you might want to save as well. So I'm going to do a quick save there and just kind of smooth these out, relax these. And you'll see with how we've set up the topology, it should stay to its region, the gluteus region, or whatever region it's going to stay to. And if you need to, you can remove edge loops from the horizontal. So you might find you have too many going this way. For example, I think I might just have one too many running this direction. So I might just drop one. And as I smooth, you'll see it'll just even those out a little bit more and give us even density. It is better to have too little than too many in some cases when it comes to topology. That's not entirely true. You kind of want to have just the right amount, but you don't want to have density that's super dense anywhere for any sort of method of modeling. It doesn't matter if you're doing it for animation or sculpting. You want to have relatively even density where possible. Now, the next task is to kind of figure out how to resolve this going up into the body. And for the most part, at some point, you just want this to run across, and that's that. So we kind of have this going down into the legs here. From this point forward, we'd want to consider kind of bringing it across. And I might just choose here arbitrarily to do this at. Just kind of resolve this into a pant-like structure, I guess you would say. So that way, it all flows across. And we can add edge loops as needed here. You'll notice I'm not adding them across yet. Those are going to kind of tie into the side here. So you can see that's going to be one going across. That's going to be one going across. And then here we can add another one going across this area. And I have to decide about that. I can just clear that out and get that going there. And if you remember, the cool thing about our groin is we made it so it loops up. So to fill in that gap, we can fill that in there. I could also decide maybe that's not where I want to cap it off at. Maybe here looks better. And we just kind of pull these up. And I think I'm going to go that route just to make sure I'm not stretching the polygons too much. And we might adjust this later. So we're going to get the extremities first, the arms, the legs, and then the torso I tend to do last because it is partly the most straightforward, but also one of the most complicated just because you have to connect everything in together. So if we go ahead and take a look at these legs now, and I just press the 3 button, you can see it's holding those forms nicely. And you can see we're even getting some of that secondary detail like the greater trochanter, some of the detail in the quadriceps, and we're not even that dense, which is impressive. We do want to avoid going too dense. The body here is feeling a little bit too dense, if I'm going to be honest. That could be a matter of just removing a singular edge here and spreading these stomach ones out a little bit more, because we're going to be getting a lot from the side here based on how this is currently set up. We can always add that back in later, so not too worried about that, but just go with that for now, and we'll call that good for the legs. So that's sort of the base setup there for leg topology. So go ahead and get your leg topology in there. Look for the key areas of functionality, kind of getting the gluteus to have its little holding edge, getting the groin there, and then tying everything together, kind of maintaining this curved edge going across here, and getting all that detail in there to allow it to move. All right, so go ahead and give that a shot, and then we'll go ahead and work our way up to the arm. The hardest part of the arm topology is really just kind of connecting down to the hand. You have a few key areas that are nice to get in here, though. Sometimes I like to start in the upper arm here and just kind of square in a bicep to get this set up here and kind of trace out the front of the arm a little bit more, like so, and we can get things to kind of run down here. You don't have to necessarily get a bicep in here. Honestly, you can just do cylinders for the arm pretty much the whole way, but the bicep and the elbow are two areas I generally like to try and catch and just have a structure to a little bit more, because they're kind of some of the key bending areas, right? Now with the elbow can be a little bit tricky because you have to think about where you want the elbow to go. How you want the elbow topology to kind of be seen. Generally speaking, it's similar to the knee. You bring in a little edge here, like so, and you bring it up. So something like that kind of captures the elbow structure, and then we can just bring this across here, and across here, and then connect these into each other, into the arm here. But the main thing is you want to make sure these edge loops are going around and they're connecting to each other in a radial fashion, in a circular fashion here. Now from here, it's kind of a matter of just connecting these and adjusting some of the edges we have. So you'll see that it's very scarce right now, and that is intentional. I want to keep it as scarce as possible just to be able to really control this and add in the edge loops I need for the hand below. So just kind of capturing the cylindrical form of the arm here and its base structure, and getting that front bicep set and getting that elbow set. Now from here, we're just going to come down the arm. I can just tab drag here and adjust this to be cylindrical. Make sure we're getting all of it. Make sure the elbow is kind of holding form there. I'll probably want to put a line down the elbow. That's usually good practice. And same with the bicep. I already have it there, but kind of getting that going down the elbow is a good idea because it just helps hold the form upstream better, right around that area. And then we can hit tab and just kind of bring this down into here. Now, there's not really any particular way this needs to connect into the arm. As straight as possible is a good idea, so we want to avoid twisting and turning. So for example, maintaining the side here with this side is kind of good. So we can add those in. However, I do want to be mindful that that bicep is kind of getting a little too wide. So I might want to actually add 2 edge loops here and spread these out more. But still kind of take a look at the side of the hand and make that intercept with the side of the bicep if I can. So adjusting these accordingly to achieve that. So you can see going up into there, that works. And then we can do something similar with the elbow on the other side of the hand. If I look for that middle area, that's going to kind of split the hand in half. You'll see I have it there. We can connect this into there, and the elbow is already kind of split as minimally as it's going to get. So I can connect that into there. And this is something I like to do that makes UVing easier, because it makes it so we can kind of just cut it across here very easily from one side of the hand to the other. I don't think it matters as much in terms of what I just did there, but from here, we just add edge loops and connect up, and that will start to fill out the arm shape. And the connection to the elbow and the bicep that I just did there, that is not a hard rule. You really don't need to worry about that, if I'm going to be honest. Looks like we need one more. Actually, what is going on here? We actually need one less here. So that is an area of concern. We don't have enough on the underside here. And that could actually be an issue with the hand itself rather than with the arm. It could also have an issue with where I've placed points. So you can see here I have these 2 coming down the bicep. That might be taking up too much room. And these ones here on the elbow, I probably shouldn't have the elbow connecting into here. So what I'm going to do is spread these out a little bit better. And like I mentioned, it's not a hard rule on the elbow. If we can get the bicep, though, I will keep that. But we do want to kind of keep this going evenly around here if we can. So since I don't have enough on the bottom side, going into here, I'll start with the bottom side and work my way around. So the bottom side's looking okay now, but we'll just go ahead and connect these as we go. And now we should start getting a little bit better results. I might want at least 1 or 2 more on the bottom, though. So let me go ahead and just kind of remove these and try and get an even go at things. Just be careful when you're deleting. You're not deleting down the hand area if you can avoid it. So what I'm going to do is try and get an even number around the arm equal to the hand, and then just start connecting them evenly and not worry about the connection points. That'll probably be a safer way. And the bicep thing, the elbow thing, you know, it's nice to have, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. The hand's going to twist the way the hand's going to twist as it stands. Okay. So let's go ahead and just count these, connect these up, and make them even. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And coming into here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we have the right amount. We can decide if that looks good upstream and just kind of relax these and nudge these as needed, and then just connect them across to their closest neighbor. And they should have pretty much a parallel connection at this point. So I'm just going to shift click and start connecting these across to each other and resolving our arm and hand. And it's okay if there's a little bit of a twist. Remember, the hands naturally twist. So we're going to have something like that anyway. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to add a couple more edge loops to smooth down the arm. I usually like to do this in excess for smoothing, and then later I come and refine it by deleting. But this just gives me an idea if this is reading okay and if the form is going to work. And that looks pretty nice overall in terms of what I'm trying to achieve. All right. And as far as density goes, I'm actually not opposed to that density, especially for using this again for a sculpt mesh. But if I had to pick, I might cut that in half. But maybe not. You know what? I think I'm actually going to leave it as dense as it was. I think I like that. Okay. Now moving upstream, we're just going to connect this back up until around the deltoid. And then the deltoid, we have to start talking about the upper body width a bit more. Main thing, just make sure these are evenly spread. What's nice is due to how we've set up the elbow, we actually gain edges going up on the elbow and the bicep, and that is intentional. The arm widens as it goes up, so you need more topology, and that allows us to get that. You may have caught this when we did the knee. The knee actually did the same thing for that area. Now, as far as this goes, really we just kind of pull this up into the upper area, and we can start to kind of angle it into the deltoid area a little bit. But I'm going to hold off and get the deltoid modeled in here to kind of facilitate the shoulder area. But we're going to consider the deltoid part of the torso. So the final section we're going to do is going to be the torso, and getting that all set up and looking nice. So let's go ahead and smooth this out. Just kind of finish off our arm topology, so to speak, and then we can start exploring the torso section and tying all three of these together, which is going to be the leg portion, the arm portion, and the head and neck portion. So they all kind of converge at the torso. You can see the funny thing is we're kind of doing this in the exact opposite way we did our study. And the study, we did the torso first, and we finished with things like the hands and the feet and the head. But in the retopology, we do the exact opposite here. And we start with the hands, feet, and head, and then work our way up into the limbs, and then finally finish with the torso. Kind of strange. It's like the inverse. All right, so if I press 3 there, you can see we're maintaining that chain structure. We have good definition to the bicep, good definition to the elbow. So we're really maintaining a vast majority of our structures. We're just missing out on some of those tertiary details. All right, so what I want you to do at this stage is go ahead and get the topology done for your arms. That way you can tie them into the body, and then we can go ahead and explore finishing up the body next. Okay, so we're going to start off the body looking at the torso and looking at the shoulder in particular. Now, the shoulder is challenging because we want to get a edge loop that kind of runs this way on the base so it can lift and deform easily. But we also want to capture the structure going this way, and also want it to get to plug into the pectoralis area. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. Now, to start off with this, I'm just going to back away the arm a bit here to give us some breathing room. And just kind of plan out our topology going over the shoulder. So the first line that I like to make is the line we need coming into the body here. That is going to essentially be just a radial line coming up and over the shoulder. And this is necessary to allow the body to move up and over the arms to move up and over the head. I know that dreaded pose I talked about, the T-pose, where characters' arms are in the air. It's not really a common pose, but you do want to get this in here if you do want to be able to achieve that. So just be mindful of that. And I'm just kind of pulling these edges out arbitrarily, not really in any specific purpose, any specific order to achieve this. But I am, however, trying to find what I would consider the crack of the arm there and getting that there. Now, the reason why is because right next to that, I want to continue the edge onto the body. So that way I get a radial edge loop connecting to the body, and I can add as many edges into here as I need. And I can make this one a little bit larger because of that. And this will kind of resolve our shoulder region and get the shoulder tied into the body. So we're officially on the body now, but also on the arm. Similar to kind of what we did with legs, kind of creating that sort of diaper area to begin with. But this is going to be necessary to allow this to lift. And we can add in an edge loop here if we want. And if we feel necessary, an edge loop here, which actually might be a good idea. And then just kind of move these down to start creating a bit more volume into this area. Now you'll notice I still haven't quite connected in, and that's because sometimes I like to give a head to the deltoid, which makes sense because the deltoid has a head, kind of coming into here like so, shaping this and coming across. And this way we kind of maintain the form of the deltoid better structurally and can feed it up into the upper torso here better. So something like this is a good start. Downside to this is it's misbehaving. Apparently I need to connect it in like that. Not a big deal. But this allows us to also restrict this if we need to, going up into the neck so we don't have a ton of these. And we can resolve this by adding an edge loop here. Now, it's hard to gauge the density at this stage, so I'm going to hold off on adding an edge loop to the center there. But the shoulder is one of those areas that we tend to need more information towards. So I may want to come in here and add in an edge loop going that way to kind of facilitate that detail, but we'll see. All right, so let's start our connections here. If we just start kind of plugging these across, we can find the areas that we need to add edge loops at, the areas we have enough edge loops for, and just kind of add them where needed. As we get towards the front here, it's going to get a little weird because I added in that deltoid head, so we might end up needing to adjust a few things. But for the most part, this should connect okay here and not really run into a bunch of issues. However, you can see I am getting an insane amount of density here that I just was not elsewhere, so I might have to play around with some of that stuff because there is a lot of detail here in the bicep. Now, what I could do is I could redirect that detail down the arm. I could also just continue adding details in here as I need. So, for example, we can add some here to the deltoid, and you can see how that gives us a lot more resolution to kind of resolve these. The one thing I have to be careful with is that I didn't add too much to resolve them on this side, but it looks like I should be okay. Only downside there is it does look like maybe one less would be good. So that way I'm not connecting up into here as much. So you do have to just be mindful that your body has more than one side to it here. So I'm just kind of checking those connections. And I could add an edge loop here down the center. It doesn't look like I have much room. I can kind of make room and just add an edge loop here. And that will give me a cleaner resolution into this area. Like so. And then coming into here, connecting that up. And then this side, see, that's the funny thing is this side's connecting right, that side's not. So this is why I like to do this the way I do. I need to figure out why those are not having an even number of connections. It's probably because it doesn't have an even number coming up. So Every now and then you'll hit a snag here, and you'll just have to do some puzzle solving. Unfortunately, topology is pretty much like solving a puzzle. You just have to find the best way to kind of balance it out and get the forms to read correctly. For example, I may not need that edge there. I might be able to just move these over, in which case now these kind of redirect down, and I can explore a resolution here on the arm to get this to work. And you can see I'm kind of pushing these back. This is kind of an interesting technique here where I'm deleting and then adding an edge loop this way until I find an area that's more scarce and actually needs the detail. You can actually do that all the way around. Like, for example, nothing says I have to stop here. I think I'm going to, though, just to kind of keep myself from doing that infinitely. But something like that will resolve that detail. And now that should resolve the arm okay. And what I'm going to do is just spread these along here a bit more and smooth. So I'm going to move this down, for example, and just kind of nudge these down because nothing says they need to be in that exact location. And I might remove some of these edges because it's just getting to be very dense in this area. But something like that. And now we just smooth aggressively. And that's going to tie this into the torso nicely and give us a resolution to the shoulder there. That should work. We may end up making some adjustments to it, but that's sort of the base structure. To get onto the body, you want to have those edge loops going in a radial fashion. I can delete this edge here, I think, and just kind of smooth out a bit more. Yeah, that should be fine. And you'll notice I use smoothing quite a bit when I'm doing the retopology. You get the form looking good, and then you just smooth it, and it works, generally speaking. Not always, but usually it works if you get those base forms in there. All right, so that's going to give us the shoulder to tie into the torso there, and you will see that that's going to give us a nice look to our deltoids, at least there in that area, going up into the torso. Now you're probably thinking, hey, are we going to continue this up into the torso? Absolutely. We just have to kind of decide how we want to. It really depends. It depends on the connection points. When it gets up here into the body, I do tend to like to isolate things a little bit more where possible. So for example, with the deltoid, sometimes it's nice to come in here and give it an edge going in this direction, down the shoulder and creating the shoulder ledge like this. This is not always ideal. So I want to point this out. There are circumstances where I would not want to do this. And it really just depends on how the character looks. This character is very buff. The muscles are very well defined. So this is one of those scenarios where I would probably want to do this. And you'll see that's going to give me a radial edge there. So if I need to add more geometry, I can. But you can also see it causes a bit of scarcity coming up into here. It's like, okay, well, you know, I can't really add an edge loop into here. I can't really have an edge loop going up. So now I'm kind of stuck with these 3 or 4 edge loops that I have on top of the shoulder, and there's nothing I can do about it besides kind of spread them out and use them wisely. So that is one of the downsides to this. So various topological structures, they have a plus and they have a minus. You just kind of have to find them. The nice thing is we can kind of continue this across here and add in more edges if we need to define these shoulders better. All right, so there we go. That gets this huge shoulder in place here to kind of facilitate that area and get us set up in here. Now, sometimes you can also get something for the shoulder kind of in place. It really just kind of depends. It's not really needed here. I don't think we have kind of what we're needing out of this. The one thing we might experiment with is continuing this loop under the arm a little bit more. So we're going to take a look at that in a moment. But let's go ahead and pause here. I think this is good. Just kind of finish getting the shoulders in there. I might add one edge loop around here for detail and then just smooth aggressively to kind of fill in that area a little bit more. Yeah, maybe not. I don't want to add unnecessary density because it will make it a lot harder to rig. But at the same time, I do want to have enough definition in here to kind of hold the form and capture the silhouette. And that does a pretty good job with that. But that's going to be what we're looking at with the shoulders. So kind of a complex setup here. One way you want to get the edge loops going like this, up around here, and then around the shoulder itself, you usually want to have sort of a circular radial edge going into that. All right, so go ahead and give that a shot, get those shoulders into there, and then we're going to explore resolving the torso next. All right, so this is the final stretch where we just kind of hope we can tie all this together. So for the torso, what I'm going to do here is kind of block in some forms. On the back side here, I'm going to create sort of a almost tank top shape, I guess you could say. Running across the backside, we really want to try and keep this as straightforward as possible with quads. But as it turns up and over the shoulder, we might want to get something a little bit more radial. So what I mean by that, essentially running across this area, if we can, having this wrap down and underneath the arm to represent the area that the scapula, the shoulder blade, and the clavicle is going to kind of manipulate. So it's going to come down, up, and over into this area, and it kind of resolves along here, sort of. So this potentially will go and channel up into here, up and over. Not always the case. Sometimes. And kind of continue back into there. That might be wishful thinking, but generally running along here is kind of a good structure to try and get. So what I could do is I could just start adding edge loops here and kind of linking these across, which is going to flatten out this area and give us this necessary edge flow of down and around. You notice I'm using something very big here in terms of the shape, and that's intentional because I can always add an edge loop after the fact down that center area to kind of fill in the volume. But I like to get it nice and big to really navigate the area, understand the form I'm trying to create, and make it easy to see above all else. But you'll see this will kind of tie everything together along this row. And we can add this edge loop here, which is going to give us some nice edge flow there. Now here's the challenge, is kind of smoothing this out and not losing all your detail that you've worked to get into here. And it actually did okay. I'm not opposed to how that responded. Now from here, you can kind of get a ring around the neck, and this is where we're just going to cross our fingers and let fate take the wheel. I'm going to save and just kind of hope we get a one-to-one connection running across here. We can do better than hope. We can come in here and kind of facilitate this by adjusting some of these and just kind of nudging things the direction they need to go. For example, if I pull these back here and just make sure all of these have a home going into the backside here, I don't really need to worry about running into a point where it's like, hey, we have too many here or too few here. And I actually think this will work out perfectly on my end. So I'm just going to connect there to there. And you can see I already have an issue. So here to here, we'll start with that, and then we'll figure out the back afterwards. But this should connect nicely across the top here. And you can see how it's connecting nicely across here. And then as far as going across here goes, I can just tab down here and continue this. Sometimes it's useful to get a pit of the neck. I didn't really do that here. You can see this is sort of the area where we would have that pit of the neck. It depends on if we want to get that. What the pit of the neck would essentially look like is this. So that would be the pit of the neck. And then there we go, going into there. So something like that. Just smooth that area and smooth into the neck. And we've connected into the shoulders. Coming to the backside here, this is a little bit more challenging just because we don't have that much topology on the back, which is okay. We can kind of pull these across here. This is an area where I might want to get a little bit more topology. And we can look at if we resolve this anywhere up here. I don't think we did, which is actually surprising. Normally I have too much topology coming down from the head, but I guess I've just gotten really good at resolving that. If needed, we could always add in more around the side that wraps, but I think that's okay. I think at this stage, it's just a matter of determining if we need to create more topology or not in that upper area. And go from there. We might want to revisit the back area. We might need to experiment with how we're resolving this. And we could potentially resolve these into a different spot along here. For example, I could continue them up and over the shoulder, which might be a better option. That way they don't resolve into the back. And it's kind of a matter of just coming in here and deleting these base areas. I'll probably still want to keep the pit of the neck. But coming here, I might want to turn the corner up and over, at least on one of these. So that way we can get an endless edge loop here if we need to. And just give ourselves more detail under the arm as we move up into this area. So it's wanting to connect there. You can see we don't have a whole lot of edge loops now that we can kind of adjust and wiggle with here. But with that coming down and over, I can always add an edge loop there and kind of smooth this area out more to give us the tightness we need there. And with this coming down and up, that kind of resolves one of those edges here. So now we should be able to get a better connection into the top area here. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. We can probably just connect these straight across. I have to be careful here. That's a face kind of getting caught in the middle. Sometimes when you're doing this stuff, you do get this weird thing where things like to go inside each other. But let's go ahead and just pull that out. And I'll just connect these up already, since I believe that's what I'm going to do anyway here. Just going to connect these one-to-one into this area and into this area. And just continue around the corner here and into that portion. And then I can adjust these as I go here to fit that neck area again. And now we have a nicer connection going into the back. And that should be enough, I think, there. And that should give us the edge loops under the arm we need and give us the area over the chest we need. Now from here, it's pretty much just a matter of going across. There are some things that sometimes it's nice to look for, but I think this should be fine. So an example is when it comes to edge loops, sometimes it's nice to have one edge loop that goes from the pectoral all the way up and over the arm. But I think in this instance, we don't really need that. So what I'm going to do is just kind of resolve these coming down into here. For the pectoralis region, if you want to, you can kind of carve an area underneath here to kind of hold better. Like so. That way it just kind of defines the form a bit better. We can adjust these as we go here. But at this stage, our goal is to basically just hit equilibrium going straight across the entire torso. And continue this down the backside here. And remember that these are going to push and pull away from each other. So at the end of the day, they're going to move. So if it doesn't look quite dense enough, just remember that is going to happen at a point. What I'm doing here is creating the next pull, which is going to be underneath these, and this is going to be what plugs straight down into the body down here. And this is going to be where I start to pray everything kind of works out here. Now I'm putting this pull right under the pectoralis area. That kind of helps hold the form a bit. And if we need to, we can always pull these down to be straighter and just add an edge loop and smooth. I also could determine if it's where I want it on the backside or if I'd want it on a different area. I'm kind of just basing it based on the width of the backside. On the backside one, it might even be worth it to have it up one higher than I currently have. But I think that does fine for the backside there as we narrow down into the torso. Okay. Now, certain areas like the stomach give us an opportunity to carve out more forms if we need to, if I want to kind of define the six-pack a little bit better. What I'm going to do, though, is just do some quick counting to see how well these are going to match, because there's not really anything fancy from here. So counting this, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. Here we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. So you can see here we need either 2 more edges up top or 2 more edges below. I'd probably prefer them up top if I could get them. A quick trick would be to just say, hey, maybe we don't need a pit of the neck there, and I could grab them from there. We could also look for anywhere else we've kind of resolved them from and redirect them down. So for example, here we kind of have a double loop going into here that we don't necessarily need. So for example, we could set that up there. And apparently my neck pouch isn't even welded here. Let's get that welded. All right, doesn't want to weld. Sometimes these things like to be a bit finicky. So I'll just delete one of these and maybe this one too. But what I can do there is just delete that area, continue these 2 down for more definition in the neck, and then there you go. Just like that, we pulled them down from the body. And this is the reason why I like to do it this way, because if we need to add in more detail, we can get more detail. So you can see we could do it that way. I was also looking for an opportunity like that on the back, but there really wasn't anywhere we have a hold up on the back side of the head, save for maybe this area here where we redirect those down, but I don't want to add more density to the back of the head. So that should be fine. Now with this, there's really no tricks to the body. You kind of just go straight across. If you wanted to define the belly button, you could, but with it being a tertiary detail, I don't see a point. That's something that is best captured in texture maps. If you're going to have a very close-up of a belly, obviously you might want to model it in, but generally speaking, we don't have close-up of bellies very often. It's probably more common in female characters, you know, that you want to accentuate some of the certain areas of the body. But for what we're doing here, it can be left alone. All right, so kind of a tight squeeze here as everything converges. And I apparently am also not good at math. I mathed wrong. Okay, so apparently I mathed wrong. It happens. So I'm going to undo all the way back up into getting that neck all back and tucked in into place here. And start connecting these across and see if maybe, just maybe, it's actually already good to go. Because it looked like it might be. So anyways, the 2 that stay no matter what are the center ones. I'm just going to connect these across and see what happens, since I obviously cannot count. You can't trust me to count these things. I think it's because I was counting by 2s, and it's been a long day for me. It looks like these are kind of connecting beautifully, though, across. And it looks like I wasn't entirely off here. It actually was the upper torso I had to lose one from. So that's a little bit more complicated. Or I can add one to the lower torso. That is an option too. So remember, you can always add or remove. You just have to kind of find the best place to add to. We could obviously just add to the groin, but we actually have a lot of topology going there. So what I might do is look at one of these areas where we have a pole. And the thing about poles is if you resolve them differently, you can get them back. There's also other factors, like back here with the sacrum. I could just add it to the sacrum there, and that might be a good solution. So that way the backside stays with the backside. And that might very well just be what we need to do. It will give us a tighter area on the sacrum there, so I don't know if it's the best use of topology, but it's probably better there than doing it on the groin area. So we can take a look and decide if that is good or not. And that actually feels okay. I mean, it's following the shape of the back just fine. And we can just continue connecting these across like we had been. Okay, so once you have that, the next step is to just give it a good even amount of divisions running across the torso and stomach area and smoothing, and then we are done with the topology. And this topology should be okay for animation. There might be some things I'm missing. You know, there was some areas in here where I was like, I don't know if that feels quite right. It's been a while since I've done something this muscular. A lot of the times the characters are a bit more plain, and it's easier to kind of tell where things need to go. But I think that's going to give us a good structure here that we could use for animation. And if nothing else, it'll give us a better structure for a base mesh that we could easily modify for our animation needs. So if I go ahead and press 3 now, we should have a nice look at our character. Should have a lot of the detail in there. You might notice some areas like this where the weld didn't quite take. That's mirroring, once again, being awful. So you might want to come in here and just kind of clean those up. And we'll do a quick clean pass on our object here just to make sure it's all good to go. So with that in place, we can see if maybe the mirroring will work again. Okay, it looks okay. You do have to look out for that, though. But there you go. That is going to complete our topology for our anatomy study and for creating our base mesh topology that should be able to be rigged and animated and have a decent amount of deformation without giving us too many issues. All right? So what I want you to do is go ahead and finish your topology. Go ahead and resolve the body there. Then we'll do a quick cleanup pass just to check for any issues and finish up our study here of the topology for animation. After finishing any sort of topology, there is some stuff you want to do. So one of the big things is you want to delete history. You'll see you have a long history here of these edits. So you want to do an edit, delete all by type history, just to clear that out, and probably save. So save that. And then what we're going to do is turn off the make life and turn off the world X. And at this stage, we could actually just take our decimated mesh, put it on a layer here, and hide it. For the cleanup, what I like to do is do a mesh cleanup here. So if you go to the mesh menu, you can go to cleanup and go into the options here. And there's a few things I like to do with this menu. So I like to switch this to select matching polygons. The cleanup matching polygons is not great. It just kind of triangulates things, and you want to make sure you know what it's doing if there's an issue. We want to apply to selected objects. If you do it to all polygons in the scene, you'll run into an issue because it might select your decimated mesh, which will probably crash Maya. And down here, we can decide what we want to look for. So we want to look for faces with more than 4 sides, and that's pretty much here in the fixed by tessellation. For remove geometry, we want to look for lamina faces, non-manifold faces, geometry, and normals. Here we want to look for edges with 0 length. The rest of these you don't really want to get into. Faces with 0 geometry area is pretty good. Do not turn on the faces with 0 map area, though, because that's referring to UVs. And you can click apply, and anywhere you see light up could be potentially problematic. So over here, we actually have an Ngon. We actually have a whole lot of funk over here. So I'm glad we checked that. You'll see these green ones here. That's something going on with the UVs. I don't know why it marks those, but really that's the area that's a problem here. We also are getting a hit in the ears, but that looks like it's just UVs, so we just need to resolve this. Now, to make it easy for me to understand, I'm just going to delete that side of the body, and to fix it, we're just going to mirror, because that was an issue with our mirror going wrong while we were working. So I'm going to delete this half of the body, and since we used mirroring, it should delete nicely along this line. Just make sure you get all of it. There might be some very thin faces. While you're at it, you could always look at the mouth cavity at this stage and consider resolving some of these if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave them be just to simplify our study here. But we can take this now and we can do a mesh and mirror geometry and just set this to 0.001. delete the history here again, and then rerun our selection. And you'll see this time we're just getting hits on the UVs, and that's fine because we don't care about that. Okay, and that is going to clean this up. So at this stage, we can go ahead and delete the history here. We can do a save scene as, and save this out as our final iteration if we want. I'll just make this human retopology 04, and I'll put final there, so we know that is the final one. And you could also clean up the document at this stage. If you want to get rid of the decimation, you can get rid of the decimation. And we can keep the eyes in here for now. We'll just kind of keep those as our base. But there we go. That's going to get our character retopologized and finished. So the next stage is to really just kind of prep this to go back into ZBrush and explore how things like UVs work on a character, but that is going to be it for the topology process, all right? So that will finish off our topology and give us a nice clean mesh we can move forward with.